We'll hear from the raw beauty of the American Middle West. We're bringing you legal legends of the Hoosier State, brought to you by the Indiana Trial Lawyers Association, a podcast where we explore the lives and careers of those who helped found the Indiana Trial Lawyers Association and grow it into what it's become today. We'll visit with our guests and sort of plumb the depths of their career path and where they've gone and where they've taken their career and Indiana law. So sit back, set the gear shift to the high gear of your soul, and get ready to talk with one of the legends of the Hoosier State. I'm your host, Joe Williams, and we are blessed enough to be here this morning with our first guest, Don Ward. Don, thanks for being on the show. How are you this morning?
I'm in good shape for an old man.
Wonderful. So, Don, before we get started, I want folks to learn a little bit about you. Tell us how a young man from Osgood, Indiana, which for our listeners is the third largest town in Ripley County, just behind Milan, which we all know,
Hoosier
was the Milan Miracle, the 1954 state championship team. So how does somebody from Osgood, Indiana, find themselves many years later a plaintiff's lawyer, a politician, a success, and a legend?
There's no easy answer. I can tell you, Joe, that when I was in the fourth grade in Millinocket, Maine, where my dad was from, the teacher asked us what we were going to do, what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I told the teacher at that time I was going to be a lawyer. And you know, Joe, I never changed that opinion. And it is the best decision that I ever made, was to be a trial lawyer in Indiana. I grew up really in the southern part of Indiana. I'm just one of these little old farm boys who come up to the big city. My aspiration when I was at law school at Notre Dame was to be a trial lawyer representing the injured victims in society. And that's exactly what I have been fortunate to be able to do for 66 years now. I'm 94 years old now.
It's incredible. But tell us a little bit more. What drew you to wanting to be a plaintiff's lawyer, wanting to represent folks who have been injured, as opposed to any of the other career paths you could take as a lawyer?
Well, Joe, most people, rank and file Americans, do not have enough money to pay a lawyer on a regular basis. The attorney fees, in order for us to keep in business, you have to charge. And some people think the fees are too high. And to me, the beauty of being a plaintiff's lawyer is I can take what cases I want to take. I'm going to get paid on not an hourly basis, but on a contingent fee basis. And at one time, well, most of my career, I've never signed a contract with a client. The best clients I have, and I think the best clients that have lawyers, are the lawyers that you can reach across that table and shake a hand. And that's been my practice the majority of the time until the Supreme Court comes along and they say, hey, written contracts, enter into your representation based upon a written contract. And that obviously is a way of life now.
So can you walk us through a little bit? I know, before we started, you and I were talking a little bit about, once you got out of school, What brought you? What brought you to the city? What brought you to the people you ended up practicing with? Tell us a little bit about that story. So Don gets out of law school. What year did you graduate?
I graduated from the University of Notre Dame's law school in 1954.
Okay.
And part of my story, the reason I'm in Indianapolis is because of my relationship that came about as a result of my youngest sister being involved in a very tragic automobile accident. And when I went to the dean of the Notre Dame Law School, I did not know a lawyer in Indianapolis, where I spent most of my younger days was in a small farming community of Osgood, Indiana, and there's 1,500 people in that town. We had 2 lawyers there, and I did not feel when I was in law school, I was in my first year of law school at Notre Dame, that either one of them was capable, really, of preparing and trying a guest statute case. So consequently, I went to the dean of the law school at Notre Dame and asked him, Clarence Banyan, for the name of a Notre Dame grad that practiced law in Indianapolis. And he referred me to the law firm here. As a result of that referral, we hired an attorney by the name of Howard Youth. And I did not know it right at that time, but Howard really was the dean of the Indiana trial lawyers. Extremely fortunate, and I was extremely fortunate that my relationship with Howard and preparing Charlene's feast for trial, a guest statute, and that's a horrible statute that we lawyers lived in Indianapolis, all trying to get around the guest statute, but it was a tough assignment. But Howard was the one that I talked to, and Mom and Dad, we hired him to represent my sister. So as a consequence of that, I spent a lot of time with Howard, and he was the lawyer when I graduated from Notre Dame and was looking at various cities, towns that I thought I would like to practice law in. Indianapolis was really the preferred venue as far as I was concerned. And I came up here and spent several days talking to various lawyers, law firms, and as a result of that, one of the lawyers that I talked to was really one of the preeminent defense lawyers in Indianapolis. He was the one that told me, Don, I don't want you to talk to any other lawyer in Indianapolis. I want you to go back and talk to Howard John. You want to be working for him when you come up here, no one else. And as a matter of fact, he said, if you have to pay him to join him, do it. That will be the best education you can possibly have as a trial lawyer. And he could not have been more correct. And other than being a deputy prosecutor for 2 years, where you try every imaginable crime to a jury of 12, your indoctrination will serve you well in your practice during your years. And that's what I did. I joined Howard. I became a deputy prosecutor. And I have had a beautiful life as a trial lawyer. And a lot of that is also due to all the lawyers that I have been fortunate to work with on cases through the Indiana Trial Lawyers Organization.
So let's stop there and kind of talk a little bit, Don. So when I started practicing, ITLA was obviously, it had been in existence for decades,
Yes.
and had grown to what it is today. And I know that organization as an organization of a whole bunch of plaintiff lawyers in this state, who, it's best described, will literally drop anything they're doing to help one of their colleagues, brothers and sisters on the trial bar if they're in a tough spot. It's a trial, it's a brief, if it's an argument. And we're able to kind of look at the Trial Lawyers Association as almost like a giant law firm for the plaintiff's side. But it had to come from somewhere, and I want to talk to you about where that came from. And part of the reason we're talking to you first, Don, and congratulations for being the first lawyer we thought of, is, your role in getting that organization going, and all of the service that it's provided over the years. So I don't even know where to begin, so I'll turn that over to you. Can you just tell us a little bit about how the Trial Lawyers Association came about, and the need that you were trying to fulfill?
When my wife and I moved to Indianapolis in 1957, January the 1st, 1957, I joined Howard Young to practice law. And at that time, the Indiana trial lawyers did not exist. At that time, lawyers from around the state of Indiana, very few. When I think back, we had lawyers from South Bend, Evansville, Richmond, Shelbyville. There were probably 6, 8. I can name every one of them that you talked to. Telephone. You had no modern conveniences. So everything was done by telephone, and we had really late 1956, in December, before I joined Howard in January, there was a meeting in Indianapolis, and we had some of these lawyers that we knew out in the state have a meeting here in Indianapolis. And that really was the beginning of a very close-knit combine of good trial lawyers. Not me, I was a neophyte. But Howard was really kind of the dean, and he was the one who organized this meeting. And that was really the beginning of what I say are the Indiana trial lawyers, because, again, after that meeting, we had organized meetings with the same lawyers, and everybody was then in the process of trying to talk to other good trial lawyers in their neighborhoods, their sections of the state. And that was really kind of the beginning of the Indiana trial lawyers. We adopted the name of the Indiana trial lawyers as a result of Howard. To begin with, the American trial lawyers nationally was known as NACA, N-A-C-C-A. It was the National Claimants Compensation of Attorneys that ultimately got the name of the American trial lawyers, then the American Association of Trial Lawyers, and developed through the years. And that meeting of these lawyers that we had, several meetings over a period of time, and the probably the impetus for really getting together. The laws in the state of Indiana were very ancient, shall we say, not friendly to the injured victims in society. We had at that time, I can tell you, that the limit, the cap on wrongful damages, wrongful death. If you have a breadwinner who is married, has a family, and he's killed tragically in a clear case of liability, the amount of damages that you could recover for that individual or that family was the magnificent sum of $10,000. So if you have, when we went to the legislature and was testifying to increase that limit, we often talk about if you hit someone and you seriously injure him or her, make sure that you, when you see that individual being almost close to death, get in your car, back up, and run over him or her so you make sure they're dead. Why? Because the amount of damages was limited to $10,000. And to make matters worse, at that time, the first wrongful death case I worked on with Howard was a husband, wife, 4 children, and the insurance company adjuster, when he came in to talk to us, he said, I'm not going to pay $10,000 because that's the maximum amount we would have to pay if we go to trial and if the jury finds for you $10,000. But we will offer you $9,000 to settle that case. Couldn't believe it. But that was a fact of life, never changed. And Howard and I talked, and we talked to our clients, and we told them that, in all fairness, we have to turn your case down. We're not going to represent you in this matter because you can get $10,000. That's the maximum you're going to get for your husband's wrongful death. And we did. We turned it down and told the widow, settle the case for $10,000. Why? Because the person who caused that accident was penniless, who didn't have any money. So that was sort of the beginning, and it was because of the wrongful death limitation, and we had a horrible gift statute. Those were laws that we felt needed to be changed by the legislature, and the only way you can do that, again, is to organize, and that's what we did. We organized the Indiana trial lawyers for a group of lawyers all over the state, and we put on seminars to educate lawyers, and so consequently, the Indiana trial lawyers was the impetus for whatever legislation came from the legislature, and we have been blessed with having, over my existence, which was from the very beginning of IT life, two of the best executive directors the Indiana trial lawyers could ever have. It was great. It has been great. It really has.
So, Don, thank you for talking to us about kind of how this organization got better or got formed and sort of began to grow. But the interesting thing, one of the interesting things, I think, and again, another reason we wanted to talk to you specifically, was the early recognition that being a plaintiff's lawyer doesn't start and stop just with what you're doing for your client, that there are needs, whether it be to talk to, folks in the legislature or, whoever you need to talk to help improve the sort of legal landscape for those people who have been hurt. And I wanted to talk with you, what sort of kind of flipped the switch and got you guys thinking and gals thinking about how can we use the political process? How can we use the legislative process to make things better for our future clients?
Well, when we were talking before, Joe, about the cap on damages, to remove that cap, as well as the gift statute, that didn't happen overnight. It took us years. Literally, the cap went from 10,000 to 25,000. Incrementally, it went up until eventually, probably, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years later, before the cap was entirely removed. And same with the gift statute. And the lawyers, what we lawyers did, we knew that we had to join forces, bring in people from all over the state to testify in front of the legislature or legislative commission, and we knew that the law was wrong as far as a lot of citizens who were injured, and it had to be changed. And there was no one else, no other organization. The Indiana State Bar Association was not involved in it. The Indiana Trial Lawyers was the only entity that was really vitally concerned, and what we had to do was to bring lawyers and your clients into the legislative process. Every year you have the legislature that's going to be in session, and they're the ones that you have to go in front of and testify, bring in live people who have had, a member killed, family members. You show what these laws, how antiquated. When the gift statute was passed originally in the early 1900s, it was because of hitchhiking, where people and cars, such as they were, the transportation, an individual would pick up a hitchhiker along the road, get involved in an accident, was that driver was negligent and caused injuries to that passenger. So as a consequence, the legislature, in their wisdom, back at the turn of the century, you get the gift statute passed. And the same way with the wrongful death statute. In order to get that, the damages, people could not, your clients could not believe that you can kill a husband. And again, if the husband and wife didn't have children, no cause of action. You had to have dependents. You needed a wife, you needed those children. And to begin with, wives didn't matter. They didn't get paid. Or husbands, I say, shouldn't get paid when the wife got killed, did not have children. The laws were,
How long ago are we talking about when you're talking about a law that says that a husband who loses his wife is not entitled to any compensation, but a wife who loses her husband?
Well, again, it happened in my lifetime.
I guess that's my point, that we're talking about, it's not that long ago.
No, not really. And again, it was because of the Indiana Trial Lawyers and all the members who had joined the Indiana Trial Lawyers and been willing to donate their time. You get paid nothing. Your pay is to make sure that justice really surfaces and is alive and active. And as a consequence of all of our labors for many, many years, changes were hard to come by. But I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, being in practice here for a long time, the laws have been remedied, and citizens of Indiana do have causes of action where a wrong has been righted.
And I know there are innumerable families across the state who are, indebted to folks like you and Howard and then all those who started this. Before you guys went down this road, were normal people who encounter, injuries and tragedy through no fault of their own, did they have anybody talking to the legislature?
No, zero.
So they were go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, the gift statute, people, could not believe when they came into your office and they were talking, and the car they were riding in, the driver was talking to his friend sitting there, or whomever that was riding with him or her in the car, and your driver just negligently drove through a red light. Clear case of liability on the part of the driver, and the passenger who was seriously injured has no cause of action against the driver for running a red light. That's what the gift statute did for really the insurance industry. So in order to recover for passengers riding in a car where the driver is clearly negligent, the only way that passenger can recover anything from a jury, you have to be able to prove that the driver did whatever he did willfully, wantonly. Like, I'm the driver of the car, and I see that red light to the light of the car, and I say, hey, what's this? So I blow the red light. Then that passenger has a cause of action against me for my willful and wanton violation of the law. And I can't tell you how many people in my practice in my long life that I had to tell, you have no cause of action. They don't believe it. But I tell you what, they make excellent witnesses. And when the legislature is in session, the best evidence that we ever presented was the people who were the injured victims in those circumstances. And finally, I don't know, it had to have taken us over 30 years to get that statute repealed. Unbelievable. But that was life. And it has been the life of the trial lawyers. But for the Indiana trial lawyers and the lawyers who belong and who are willing to donate their time and go in front of the legislature and do the right thing as far as we were concerned, repeal this law. Finally, it was done. Not too long ago.
No, it wasn't.
Well,
so, along with working with the legislature, at least the way I first heard your name when I was practicing here was with talking about the Judicial Nominating Commission and talking about, how we get judges on the Court of Appeals and how we get judges on the Supreme Court and things like that. And that you were instrumental from the very beginning of the Judicial Nominating Commission. And I want you to talk with us a little bit about, one, kind of why, two, how, and three, what kind of impact do you think you've been able to make?
Well, Joe, for years, from the time the Constitution was adopted up until the early 1970s, lawyers who wanted to be on the Indiana Court of Appeals and the Indiana Supreme Court had to go through a convention process. Every year, every 2 years or 4 years for the governor, they would meet representatives from all 90 counties would meet here in Indianapolis at I'm not for sure where they did meet. But they would come from all over the state. The convention center is what we have here now. But they would meet here, and if I'm a practicing lawyer in Osgood, Indiana, and I want to be on the Indiana Court of Appeals, I would have to go to that convention, and I would have to convince all these members who were here at the convention that you should vote for me to be the lawyer who is going to be the nominee for the Republican Party or Democratic Party in the upcoming election next fall. And if I have enough of the county chairman, vice chairman, and etc., if they vote me, then I go on the ballot in the fall. Now, other than your immediate family and the people who know you in your individual community, no citizen in the state of Indiana would know who that lawyer is from, I don't care, whatever Tyler kind of, and they wouldn't talk about. They no knowledge. But if I was the nominee, my name went on the ballot, and when the citizens went in to vote, a check mark. If I'm a Republican, they may just mark without one check mark. Everyone else on that slate's going to go into the end of the office. And I am going to now be on the Indiana Court of Appeals. And that was changed in the early 1970s. The law was changed, and that's when the Indiana Judicial Nominating and Qualifications Commission was set up. And as a result of that meeting and the legislature adopting a new method of selecting judges for the Indiana Court of Appeals and the Indiana Supreme Court, because then at that time they set up the commission that was set up was made up of 3 lawyers, 3 laymen, and the Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court was the chairman of that committee. Early, the lawyers who belonged to the Indiana Trial Lawyers, we had several meetings, board of directors, and then we came to the conclusion that there is no more important commission for the 3 lawyers to be individuals that we knew. You had a lawyer from the 1st District, 2nd District, and the 3rd District.
I just got the feeling in my stomach that I know that you probably got too. Every time when that piece of paper gets handed up to the judge, and there's that awkward 15 seconds where the judge is reading it,
yes,
and you're trying to figure out from the judge's eyes what he said, what he, and then it gets read, and there's nothing like it.
And now we have 6-member juries. Most of my career, a lot of my career, all members are on the jury. The number was 12.
Mm-hmm.
And to convince 12 people that you are right, that your client is right, it deserves to be compensated for all that they have been through. There's nothing like it. There's none. That's why the vast majority of lawyers had never tried a jury trial in their life.
It's putting yourself as a lawyer, at least in an incredibly vulnerable position, because you're up there and you're charged with taking care of somebody and fighting for somebody who can't fight for themselves, and it can be overwhelming.
It is overwhelming. It is overwhelming, and you can think of a lot of cases that you've been involved in, and you like to think, even in a case where you don't get what you really think you're entitled to as far as the amount of money that you may be asking for, you think that to get reimbursed for medical expenses and the loss of wages, the injuries, the long-lasting effect of those injuries on that individual. This is their day. And everything depends upon what those 6 jurors now say that justice in this case involves. But it has been a rewarding career, Joe. I can't think of anything else in my life I've ever lived. And we have a big family. But there's nothing like being a lawyer and being a trial lawyer. Because I know that most of my lawyer friends have never tried a jury trial. Never in their life, and they're not about to. And that percentage, I'm saying, is probably 70 or 80% of the lawyers have never tried a jury trial in their life.
There's a lot of lawyers that'll do anything in their power to avoid it.
Well, they just don't take cases. They will refer them to other lawyers that they know that are good trial lawyers, have the reputation, have the respect of the court, the judges, and will do what's right to see that justice is done in this particular case.
Fearlessly.
Yeah.
What stands out to you over the course of a career like this? What event, trial, case, client, could be anything, do you take with you almost every day and you think about? Like, what's been most impactful?
Well, I think the case itself, Joe, you're never away from your cases. These are human beings that you are representing, and you know that everything depends upon what you do, what you say, your relationship with your fellow lawyers, with the judges, with the doctors, and whoever you're dealing with. Everything depends upon the integrity, and there's, your reputation probably is the greatest thing that Joe Williams has. The respect that we other lawyers have for you, that the court has for you, your clients have for you, that's the ultimate. That's the ultimate, your reputation. You live and die with it.
What would you, so for somebody coming out of law school today and they want to be a trial lawyer, what advice do you give them?
I've told several, and I have 2 grandchildren right now in law school. Got another one that will be gone. All in one family.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. But they know, and one of my grandsons now, well, I tell them there's only one way to be a good trial lawyer. You go and be a deputy prosecutor or be elected prosecutor in your county, wherever you're going to practice. Why? Because crime never quits.
Crime never takes a break.
Never takes a vacation. And here in Marion County, I was only on the prosecutors. When I went on the prosecutor staff, I told an old person who was elected prosecutor, I said, "No, you got 2 years of my life. That's it. You own me for the next 2 years." But at the end of that 2 years, I was served. Why? Because you can try, there have been times, I think there was 5 times that I tried 3 jury trials in 1 week.
Oh my gosh.
Now, those are not serious murder cases, etc., but they are jury trials.
Right.
The court's in session, you impanel the jury, you put on your evidence, you make your final argument, the jury retires for a verdict. Now, that's just one case. Somebody has been charged, and from my standpoint, hopefully a verdict of guilty was found. But tomorrow morning, I'm going to be in here trying another criminal, same way. That's why I say when you talk about jury trials, if I take in all of that, I can't imagine really how many jury trials in my life I have tried, and I've been at it for 66 years.
What's the most when you think back over your career? What's the most rewarding thing that to you?
Of course, the plaintiff's verdict. It's the relationship, Joe, that you build with your client. I can truthfully tell you, I have never had a client that has ever fired me. I've never had an argument with a client. Even when you are telling them bad news, you can relate to them because they become a part of your life. They truly do.
Every time I've tried a lawsuit, you finish that. No matter what the result is, those people become part of your family. You spend, I mean, just by nature of just spending the amount of time you spend with them, but you're also getting to know them at a very core level. And it's the relationship.
Well, my son and I have been practicing together, Charlie, for 35 years. And when Charlie and we don't advertise, we have never advertised. I've been against it all my life. But the best advertising we can do, that Joe can do, or any other lawyer, is that client who walks through that door.
That's right.
We're just small fry. I'm just a little country boy that come up to the big city. Didn't know two people while I came up here. But I spent those years with Howard, best years you could ever possibly have. But when I left, Howard was the type of lawyer you won't believe it. But I did the eulogy of his funeral. And I told a big congregation of people that was there that, man, I left Howard. Most lawyers, when they leave a law firm, maybe under good circumstances, sometimes bad. But when I left, Howard called me into his office one day, and here was a stack of files just on the floor. And when I was with Howard, we did our own investigating. We didn't have hired guns to go out and talk to witnesses or, you're looking at two people in that firm that did everything that had to be done. Talk about having meals and, great. It was all great with great relationships with your clients. They became a part of your family. They really did. And I can go on. There's no end, and the clients, we still get, I started to say before with my son Charlie, when he came on, we've been practicing together for about 35 years. Charlie said, Dad, with the advertising, what can we do? And I told him, it's never going to be to advertise. Well, Charlie, and I said, we still get Christmas cards from clients, etc., and your relationship, and we get referrals in from those clients who know that we're trial lawyers and we only represent the injured victims in society. So he said, well, why don't you do something to follow up with those clients a year from now, 5 years from now? If you have no relationships with them, never talk to them. So my son, to this day, he calls all of it. I can't tell you how many telephone calls he makes to those clients on their birthday.
No, that's awesome.
Hundreds, from all of them. You really wouldn't believe it. Starting about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he may be there until 6:30 when he will call 6, 8, 10, or maybe 20 people who have had a birthday, whoever it is.
Incredible.
Well, I'll tell you, you're never going to find his clients you would not label. But he has that kind of a relationship with them. And again, we don't do any advertising. The best advertising is the relationship you have with the clients.
Well, Don, we're getting to the point where I hear Shapiro's calling our name. I think we're getting close to the end here. I wanted to thank you incredibly for sitting down with us and for being our guinea pig, being the first one to come out. Your career has had, it had impact on people like me whom you didn't even know. So we thank you for everything you've done for the trial lawyers, for the people of Indiana, and thanks for talking with us today. And I know everyone in ITLA thanks you. And before we close this episode, I wanted to give a thank you to all the beautiful people at ITLA, including Jason, Sarah, Matt, Jennifer, Amanda, and Warren. Thank you on behalf of all the trial lawyers here in the state for everything that you guys do. And Don, thanks again for spending some time.
My pleasure, just to be able to sit down, chat with you, and talk about the practice of law.
Love it.
And my very limited impact. Whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Well, thank you.